Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I talk with nutrition expert Amanda Carneiro. Amanda is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, a certified personal trainer, and also a restorative wellness practitioner. In this episode, we dive into dysregulated emotions and the impact they have on your nutrition, how your internal is impacting your food choices, having different cycles of food if you're after weight loss, reverse dieting, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Amanda Carneiro, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Is that what people call you, or do they call you like Raw Amanda? What do you get?
They just call me Amanda.
Do they?
Yep. Simple.
In
Straight to the point.
in hindsight, it would be weird to be called your full name, wouldn't it? Often.
Nobody calls me by my last name. First of all, we just had this whole conversation about how like my last name is a bit hard to say for some people. But yeah, people just call me Amanda. No. Well, my mom calls me Mandy. One of my best friends will sometimes call me. Well, one of my best friends will sometimes call me that. But that's really it. I don't enjoy it. I don't like that.
Does she call you Amanda when you're in trouble?
Well, I'm hardly in trouble these days. When
I
was younger, yes.
I would hope as a mature age woman, not often that you get in trouble these days, but younger, back in the day.
Yes, full name.
Yes. Love it. Golden rule of parenting. So we got sidetracked really quickly. I thought we might, but I didn't think it was going to be that early. Can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today, please?
Yeah. So obviously my name is Amanda. I have a company called Raw Fitness and Nutrition that I started, I want to say maybe 10 years ago or so. I was living in Los Angeles. I was personal training. I got into personal training basically by accident because I moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting. And I was looking for a job that I could make good money at and have a flexible schedule so that I could still go to auditions. And I kind of fell into it. A friend was doing it and I was like, okay, I guess I'll try this. This, I guess, sounds okay. But I was not into health at all at the time. And I became certified as a personal trainer and loved it. Just became obsessed with it because of the fact that I transformed my body and I saw what it did for the rest of my life. My relationships improved, my productivity. I really started to be able to put effort and time into my business and see that kind of grow. And then I saw obviously what it did for my clients. And as that progressed, I just started really becoming more and more passionate about nutrition and lifestyle. And that's all I wanted to talk about with my clients. So then I started doing some nutrition and lifestyle consulting. And that kind of grew into now what is less one-on-one coaching, although I still do a little bit of that, and more. Well, I have two courses now. I have a Fat Loss 101 course and a Gut Health 101 course, which is a self-guided course, basically taking you through all the steps you need to lose fat or improve your gut health. And then I also have a recipe book that's a high protein dessert recipe book. And that's where I'm at now. And I've been traveling the world for the last 3 years, no longer in LA, no longer acting. Quit that many years ago, just because I fell out of love with it and fell in love with this. And yeah, here I am.
Do you still, when no one's around and you're in the lounge room with yourself, just pull out a little kind of actress moment ever anymore? Like lines or anything like that where you're just calling out lines to yourself?
No, because I feel like I would need a script. However, I will say that I think it has really given me a lot of value now with Instagram and social media that I could, not that I'm quote unquote performing, but I feel like it does give me ease in front of the camera that I think other people maybe don't have or didn't have the history of.
Based on what you just said then, do you add a little bit of salt and pepper to your social media based on the fact that you can act? Do you razz it up a little bit?
Well, I think I understand performance. So I also was trained in comedy. So I understand a little bit of that. So I think I can add that to it. But I do I do think I stayed pretty authentic and genuine.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's funny. I had a side note, but I had an astrological reading last night, and she's one of the things that I didn't realize is she said, I'm an Aries sun and moon. And one of the things she said is like your inner and outer worlds are very similar. So people often say that you're authentic because I don't think I know any other way to be. Like I can't really show up on Instagram and be any other way than I really am.
I like
which
it.
is hard sometimes because sometimes you go through hard times or you don't really want to show up. But one of the things that I really try doing is just showing up as I am.
Yeah. People appreciate it.
I think so. Yeah. Because I think also people want to see a real person. People don't want to see like somebody who's like always got their shit. I hope I can swear, got their shit together. Okay. Who always has their shit together and who's like always happy and always just like everything's great, because that's not the reality, and also just doesn't make them feel good about themselves, like people want to feel seen and be like, oh, because she's having a hard day too, and like it's okay that I am as well.
I love that. It just humanizing the work that you do in terms of health and fitness and just the human element. What was your last breakdown over? I told you we were going to go for something. I told you we were going to go somewhere different.
Oh, shit. Oof. I mean, I feel like I have a breakdown pretty often these days. I went through a breakup last year that was really hard for me. And I think part of the reason that was hard for me was, well, I think there was a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is that I didn't have a home. So we were traveling together and then we broke up, and I was kind of like, just flying free with like no base, no good friends around me. And so I had just like a really hard time, and I'm still trying to figure that out of where I'm going to live. And so I think there's a lot of instability that comes with a breakup, and then the instability of like not knowing where to live. So sometimes the lines can be blurred of like what I'm upset about. It's like, oh, am I like still thinking about this person? Am I like still sad about this? Or is it just like, I just really am sad about not having a home and routine and stability. Travel is great, but it's also very unsettling. So, I mean, I had a breakdown like 2 days ago, just like, okay, what am I even doing with like, where am I going to be and where am I going to live? And what am I doing? And it's also hard to run a business from a place of like not having routine. I mean, I try to keep a daily routine as much as possible, but it's constantly changing depending on like where, like even the Airbnb where I'm staying it's constantly going to shift my routine in a lot of ways.
When it comes to habits, there's two types that often are spoken about of like context dependent and context independent, meaning that some of the habits that you form or break are dependent on like structure and some aren't. So context dependent for me would be nutrition. Context independent would be exercise. Like my exercise doesn't change wherever I go, but I find my nutrition does when I'm traveling. What have you noticed about your traveling when it comes to food and how well you maintain your own health?
I think I've been doing this for quite a while now, so it does come fairly easy to me, but you're right in terms of like, so my exercise, I pretty much work out on the same days of the week. I work out 4 days a week. So those usually don't change, but maybe the time that I work out changes. And nutrition, the foundations and the guidelines don't change, but the types of food do change. Like I have a pretty animal-based diet, I guess. And while I still like I'm in the UK right now, and there's a lot of like wild meat. There's like a lot of like venison and elk, and that I really love that. So those kinds of foods I'm really incorporating more into my diet more than I would in other places. If I'm like living by the beach, I'm going to have more seafood, that kind of thing. Also, in terms of the climate and the environment and where I am, that's also going to change. Like when I'm in Costa Rica, I'm eating a ton of fruit. Here in the UK, I haven't touched a piece of fruit since I've been here, I don't think, because it just doesn't make sense for me to be eating food that's not growing here. So I really try to eat seasonally and locally wherever I am for health reasons. And I mean, mostly for health reasons, because your microbiome does change based on where you are. So it's really important to eat with the season and locally. And then another thing is based on also the sunrise and the sunset, which changes wherever I am too. My eating window is usually while the sun is up only. And in Costa Rica, that's really easy because the sun comes up like 6 a.m. or something. And then it sets at 6 p.m. So I'm kind of done eating there. But here the sun sets at like 10 p.m. So it's a little bit different. So I have to kind of manage that a little bit better. And one of the most important things for me when I start my day is to get the sunlight in my eyes. Really important for metabolism, hormones, and just optimal health, resetting your circadian rhythm. And that it really depends on like here I have a balcony and the sun hits it beautifully. So that's amazing. I can go right outside to get the sun in my eyes and go on with my day. But in other places where maybe that's not available, where I have to like maybe go outside and go for a walk to get the sun in my eyes, that's going to also change my routine a little bit. But that is one of the most important things for me. That is like number one on the top of my list is like getting sun in my eyes first thing in the morning. So a lot of things shift, but the foundations are always there.
That was beautiful. So there's a lot in that. So in terms of things shifting, what have you noticed about your own behavior when it comes to your relationship to exercise and nutrition when you are going through tough periods? Are you still squeaky clean? You don't get rattled by it? Do you find yourself changing your nutrition when you're having a breakdown, breakthrough, breakup? What happens for you?
My exercise usually is like pretty stable. I do actually find like exercise, my workouts are my therapy. It is a time for me to process. There's been so many times where I have like been crying in the gym because that's when emotion, when you move your muscles, a lot of, as you know, like a lot of our emotions get stuck in our bodies. So sometimes when we're moving, it's a great opportunity, I think, to just let those emotions out. There's been many times where I'm like, just go to the bathroom, cry in the bathroom stall, come back out, go back to doing your leg presses, But I do feel like exercise has been an amazing outlet for me in order to deal with everything. And I do also feel like it is the thing that is so empowering too, because you can go into the gym and you just like, it's just a reminder of like that you're strong, that you could do hard things, that you can push through things even when they suck. And so for me, my exercise has been pretty stable. I don't think that unless like I've been somewhere like in Croatia where there's like no access to a gym really, like that is the only time that I've not worked out. Otherwise, like I have pretty much hit my exercise goals for the week. So that hasn't really been an issue, although there are times and periods where maybe I feel a little bit weaker. I don't push as hard, but I still kind of go in there and go through the motions. Diet gets a little bit tricky because if I'm really, really sad, I feel like I don't have an appetite. But I have to be really, really in the depths of it and like super like anxious and really, or just really just like so sad. But otherwise, I tend to use food to cope. So I have to really check myself when not emotionally regulated that I don't go crazy with food. Because I am the type of person that like, if I feel sad, okay, let me go get a pastry or let me go eat something. Or when I don't want to feel what I need to feel, I just will go have a meal or go out to eat or go find something sweet to eat in order to not feel that. So that has been my work, is learning how to just sit with the feeling. And breath work has been life-changing for that. Is like, we'll just put on a breath work session for a few minutes and just like let myself cry or let myself feel whatever it is that I'm feeling, move through it, and then be like, okay, not actually hungry. I really don't need that pastry. I don't need that chocolate croissant, for the third day in a row.
Fuck, they taste good though. As someone who's an expert in this space, what's your belief around nutrition as it stands at the moment? And do you think there's enough education and support with people understanding emotional eating, eating and its relation to trauma, etc.? Because I feel like there's 15,200 diets and you probably have a stronger number. But beyond that, in terms of the emotional component, the human component, I feel like it's really underdeveloped. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's probably a bigger factor than we even realize. First of all, in terms of gut health, digestion actually begins in the brain. So if we are so disconnected from what we are eating or how we or why we are eating, that's going to have a tremendous effect on our gut health. It's really easy to say somebody has a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction or a, messed up relationship with, let's say, even social media. But because we have to eat every day and it's like such a part of it's like so ingrained in our culture, and, different cultures there's different factors there, but it's a harder one to kind of pinpoint. And I think people also say, well, I like this food, so I'm never going to give that up. Well, I think that has more to do with your emotional connection to that than anything. And people really have such emotional attachments to food that it's such a complicated relationship. And I think that it's probably the number one thing when we are dealing with especially fat loss that we have to address, because if you don't address the emotional connection that we have to food and how we use food to cope with our emotions, you're never going to get to where you want to be. I really don't think so. I think it's the number one thing. And it's sometimes a thing that people get to last when they're trying to kind of deal with everything. But I do think it's the number one thing. This is why I'm just a huge proponent for therapy and emotional regulation, because if you don't have that, you're constantly as much. You can know everything about nutrition. You can know the exact meal plan that you need to eat. But if you're not dealing with your dysregulated emotions, you're constantly going to be feeling like a failure, because you're never going to be able to hit the exact goals that you set for yourself, because you're constantly going to be looking for food to solve an emotional problem that food will never be able to solve for you.
Where do you start for you? I know you don't do a huge amount of one-on-one these days, but where do you start in that conversation? How do you entertain the idea that there's even an emotional component to their eating, that they might have to let go of, their emotional eating patterns, the trauma, the association? How does that conversation kind of come about in your eyes?
Well, I think it's a conversation that you can't really just in my one-on-one coaching, you can't really dive into it straight away unless I know the person, because it is, can bring up a lot, and people need to also feel very comfortable with you in order to kind of express those feelings or to tell you the truth about what's going on. But I think one of the best things for people to do is start a food journal and have no judgment around it, or try your best not to have any judgment around it, but to write down everything that's going on. So if you have a moment of binge eating or emotional eating or overeating or just eating something that you didn't really want to eat to begin with, writing down what was going on during that time. Were you stressed? Were you fighting with your partner? Were you having an issue with somebody at work? Just writing this down, because I think awareness is the number one, that's the number one thing you need to kind of start with, is just being aware of it, not needing to change it at all, just being aware of it. And then the work that I can do with a client is to and people can do this on their own, is just to start to explore why they did that. So oftentimes people are okay, I went to dinner and everybody was eating, we all ordered food to share, and then we all had dessert, and I just didn't want to not have that because I wanted to enjoy myself. So, okay, well, let's explore that a little bit further. Did you really want to enjoy yourself? Did you really want to eat that? Well, no, I didn't really want to eat it, but everybody else was eating it. Okay, so maybe there was an underlying thing of needing to fit in, right? So we just we just need to dig in a little deeper. Let's explore what was going on there. Do I feel the need to fit in? Did I not want to bring any attention to myself? Or is it a case of okay, I was stressed and I just went to the refrigerator and, or went to the cafe and got this and ate it. Okay, so now that we're aware of that, now we can take at least a pause and say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. We can still go and eat the thing, but maybe we could just take that pause and say okay, this is what I'm feeling. Okay, I'm still going to eat this, but this is what I'm feeling. Maybe the next step then is to say okay, this is what I'm feeling. Maybe instead I can just sit down for 5 minutes or even go into the bathroom stall and just like have a moment and breathe through it, or even doing like a 5-minute breathwork session, which is like my go-to because it's 5 minutes. Like I think everybody can take 5 minutes and just settle in and really feel into what's going on. And then being able to ask yourself like, okay, if I go eat that thing, is that actually going to make me feel better? Is that, walk yourself through those decisions. Is that going to make me feel better? Is that going to resolve whatever issue I'm dealing with? Or is it just going to make it worse? And then we can have some more clarity over like, okay, now I can choose from a regulated emotional state of whether I actually want that thing. And, also if you really want to eat the chocolate croissant or whatever it is, fine, have it, but have it from a place of being intentional with your choices rather than using it to cope or to fit in or to not bring attention to yourself or not to feel what you actually need to feel.
What do you see as a pattern or a recent pattern of yours when it comes to food that for you is a unconscious, misaligned food? So what I mean by that, for those listening, like if you consciously choose, to your point, if you consciously choose to eat that chocky croissant, different story. But the unconscious, what patterns for you? Is it stress? Is it when you just feel like you don't have energy? Is it, I assume even as a female, certain times your cycle might kind of bring up stuff. But what do you notice as like a dirty little secret of yours when it comes to some patterns?
Yeah, definitely certain parts of my cycle for sure. But I actually allow myself, like, especially if you have a goal that you're working towards, women should be aware that we are hungrier during like our luteal phase right before our cycle starts. And you actually should allow yourself to have more food during that time so that you can feel good and don't feel deprived. And that actually will tend to give you more energy. I also feel like a lot of people are like, I have no energy for my workouts during my luteal phase. And that's actually the time personally that I always will hit PRs and feel super strong. And maybe it's because I'm actually giving myself more food. But this is why I always go back to like listening to your body, because everybody's so different. So you have to just listen to your body. And it's like, for me, it's like a great opportunity to actually build muscle, but that's not going to be the case for everybody. There's 2 triggers for me that are very apparent actually recently. One is like when I'm tired. So if I'm tired and I'm working and I'm like really just trying to get through something, I will just unconsciously get up, go start looking around for something. Or like if I'm at a cafe working, which I often do, I start to kind of like look around the pastry case or like look at the menu. What do they have? So that's one thing that I have to really, I'm like, okay, you're just tired. Maybe go take a nap which I did yesterday because I was like, I'm exhausted. I've been kind of fighting being sick, as you can maybe hear a little bit. So I was like, I just need to go take a nap. So I just lay down, napped for I think I fell asleep for maybe 5 minutes. And then I woke up and I was like, okay, I feel better. Now I can kind of move forward. So that's one. The other thing that's always been a trigger for me is when I have to do maybe more like deep creative work that I really don't want to do in my business. If I'm like writing something that I'm like struggling to write, or maybe just doing something hard, like creatively hard. That's often the time where I just want to distract myself and go get something to eat. What I have found to be really helpful is movement. So getting up, taking a walk, coming back, making myself like a cup of tea. So it kind of gives me something to do physically. But I feel like walking, getting sunshine, if I can just like sit in the sun for a few minutes here in London, it's kind of impossible because the sun doesn't really come.
Not an easy story.
Doesn't come out very often. But if I could just go sit outside in the sun or go take a walk, that can often be the tool that I need to not go to food. But for me, yeah, it's being tired and being stressed or overwhelmed or having to do something hard.
So you mentioned something before, which as a male, I don't know anything about, although who knows these days, maybe I can get pregnant. In that you increase your food intake at different parts of your cycle. Is there a calorie number? Is there a percentage based on how many calories you have based on your size? Like, how would one determine the increase at certain periods of your cycle?
Yeah, that is going to be individual, just depending on like your specific goals. But I would say like sometimes even like 100 to a few hundred calories a day would probably be on average. For somebody who's in a fat loss phase, so trying to lose weight and they're in a deficit most of the month, what I find really helpful for people, not only for just your cycle, but also for your metabolism, is the week before or even 2 weeks before your cycle, going into a maintenance phase. So going into the amount of calories that your body needs to maintain its weight is really helpful. So maybe 2 to 3 weeks of the month, you're in a fat loss phase, you're maybe losing a little bit of weight. And then that 1 to 2 weeks before your cycle, you're maintaining. So that's really helpful just in terms of giving yourself enough energy to kind of move through that month. But also a lot of women want to just stay in a fat loss phase for months and months at a time in order to get to their goal, which is really unhelpful for metabolism because your body adapts very, very quickly. So your metabolism is going to slow down when you are in a caloric deficit. So taking that week or 2 week break is actually so beneficial for your metabolism, and it actually negates that metabolic adaptation. So your metabolism will slow down a lot less or not slow down at all if you do that. And that is actually the way that I prefer people to go into a fat loss phase, is not to like be in a fat loss phase for, let's say, 3 months at a time, like 8 to 12 weeks, which a lot of people do. Is I like to be in a fat loss phase for a few weeks and then come out of it for a few weeks and then in and out of it for maybe a longer period of time. So it might take you a little bit longer to get to your goal. But when you get to your goal, your metabolism is going to be in a much healthier place than it would be if you were just in a straight fat loss phase for 8 to 12 weeks.
So just to clarify, in case people missed it, when you're coming out of a fat loss phase, I guess, you're coming to a maintenance, you're not coming to a surplus, right?
Right. Well, you can, but most people will probably want to go into a maintenance.
Yeah.
I do think it's beneficial to go. Yeah. You probably don't want to go into a surplus because you are probably going to put on fat that you're not wanting to put on. But there is a lot of benefit. There's something called, I don't know if you're familiar with reverse dieting, but you used to be a personal trainer, didn't you? That's
Back in the day.
Okay. So I really like for people to go into a reverse diet as soon as possible or as soon as they feel kind of ready to do that, because most people just want to be in a fat loss phase all the time. But there is so much benefit to actually putting on muscle in order to boost your metabolism and also to shape your body. We know a lot of people are, they look at these on Instagram or whatever, they're like, oh, this person has this great body, this great shape. But they also forget that is not just about taking fat off your body. That is also about building muscle. And you cannot build muscle without enough fuel coming in. So what I like people to do at some point is to slowly increase their calories while they also have a really good workout routine, so that they're actually building muscle with those extra calories. So what you want to do is just slowly increase your calories week after week so that you're maintaining your weight, but that you're shuttling those extra calories into building muscle. So you might not be losing any weight, or you might actually put on a few pounds here and there as you do that. But once you can get to a point where you're really eating a lot of food and maintaining your weight, you're actually in an amazing place to then go into a fat loss phase. A lot of people don't want to do that at first. I think if I had my way with most people, I would put them into a reverse diet before putting them into a fat loss phase. So actually increasing their calories to a really, really good amount so that when they do go into a fat loss phase, they're not in a very restricted amount of calories. Like a lot of people are trying to lose weight on 1,200, 1,000 calories, which is insane. You're not going to get enough nutrients, and you're just, at what point are you going to say okay, I can't reduce my calories anymore because you're so low already? So if I had my way, I'd reverse diet people to a really good caloric amount and then put them into a fat loss phase. So then you're also building a ton of mass and muscle. So that when you do lose fat, you have all that muscle to show once the fat comes off.
As a very small human that you are.
Yeah.
What are you, 5'4"?
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm actually 5'1".
Are you 5'1"? So how many calories do you have a day?
At the moment, I'm eating about 2,000.
So interesting. I'm working through this exact problem with my coach because he's like, you eat like a 5'1" female, and at 86 kilos and 5'11", I'd be doing 2.2, I reckon. And he's like, mate, no is the answer.
I feel like that is so common with men, and especially like lean men like you. It's fun. I was just speaking to somebody, actually somebody from Croatia. I was like, I want to see your meal plan because he was having trouble sleeping, and I was looking at, I'm like, this is like my diet. This is like less than what I'm eating. I'm like, of course you're having issues sleeping, right? Or there's going to be so many metabolic issues that you're going to have when you're not eating enough, because your body's going to do what it needs to do, but the things that it doesn't necessarily need, like the things that are not imperative to survival, it's going to slow down. So you probably will have less energy, but it's also going to be really hard to put on muscle if you're not eating enough. It's
interesting because I think as an outsider, most people would think, oh, this, whether it's reverse dieting, eating more calories, is it just a female phenomenon? And I spent 15 years in the space, and I still, like, my body contracts when it's like, dude, we need to up your, like, my mind just goes. And I know on a conscious level, I'm like, I get it. But on a deep level, I'm like, I'm just going to be a fat slug.
Yeah.
If I just increase I don't want my body fat and everything to go up, but like, it's amazing the internal dialogue that I'm facing with 15 years of history in this space, let alone, your average Joe Blow who is fresh to nutrition.
And being a male, for women, it's like the psychological like effect that has is just like, and I always say to people, like, you don't know until you actually go through it. Totally. Like, you won't know how it's going to affect your body until you actually start moving through it, and to start to see like your body might actually change that much. Actually, some people tend to get leaner during a reverse diet. And so people are like, your body also is like, oh, we have enough food, we can relax. You also start to have more spontaneous movement. So you are moving around more, you have more energy. So you're fidgeting more. And so that actually ends up burning more calories. And you don't realize when you're in a caloric deficit, all of a sudden you're just like, there's no movement, no fidgeting, because your body just like doesn't have the energy to do that. But I think, to your point, I think this is, I also have a coach, a nutrition coach. And I think this is the benefit to, because you can know all the things. You could say, I know I need to be on a reverse diet. I know I need to be eating more. But having a coach who's like, this is what we're doing, and you just are like, okay, I'm going to, even though this is uncomfortable, I'm going to do that. Somebody to also check in on photos or what's going on or your workouts to say like, do you see that this is the progress that you're making? Or actually your body hasn't changed that much. Like, look at these photos and you're eating this much more. Like, first of all, aren't you just like way happier that you get to eat this much more and that your body isn't changing? But this is the benefit of having a coach to walk you through that. And I think that is invaluable. And if you are somebody who struggles with the psychological aspect of it, just hire somebody.
And to speak to that point, whether it's nutrition, whether it's business, whatever it might be, is giving yourself that period of time to actually try it. Like, in the big scheme of things, you give yourself 3 months and you're like, fuck, okay, it worked, it didn't work, whatever, but just commit to it for 3 months and just see. No strings attached. If for whatever reason it doesn't work, you can go back to your old way of living after, but give yourself that full period of time to actually have a proper crack at it.
And I also think if you think like 3 months earlier, you're like, okay, have things even changed that much in the last 3 months? And if they haven't, then like, yeah, there's no problem with trying something new. Cause at the end of the day, like, okay, maybe things might not change at all, but they haven't changed in the last 3 months, but they also could change tremendously in a positive direction. So why not?
Mm. What in the health and fitness landscape of 2023, I've been removed from the fitness space for 5 years. What are we doing wrong? I know I need you to be really succinct with this answer because I know we could go for answers for hours. What's the top 3 things we're doing wrong in the 2023 health and fitness landscape?
Okay. Number one, well, maybe not number one, but one of them is just focusing on calories in, calories out. So no focus on nutrient density, no focus on protein, no focus on like building muscle and strength versus like, people, it's like, just go for a run. I'm really stuck in my health and wellness bubble a lot of the time. But when I go push myself and get out of my wellness bubble and talk to quote unquote normal people, it's really interesting the things people will say. And it's like, okay, I started running and I started like watching, just eating less. And while that can work for a very short amount of time, that is going to really put your metabolism at risk. And it's going to make it harder and harder for you to continue to lose weight. And this is why people are constantly stuck in this, like, this losing weight, gaining weight back, losing weight, gaining weight back. And that's obviously not healthy, and it's also not getting you to where you want to be. So that would be one of them. The second would probably be the focus on like reducing animal protein. I see that that's a very common thing I often see, or like people are like, oh, I'm trying to be healthier. I stopped eating so much meat, and I'm just like, oof, I have to really try to not say too much.
Do you think there might be some like narrative that's been played out that many people can't see at the moment? I'm just asking the questions. I don't know who owns the most farmland in the US, but I think
exactly.
Bill Gates. So I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's really sad because I just think it's like probably the worst thing somebody could do, because animal protein is the most nutritious food on the planet. If you can literally exist on steaks all day long and just steaks, you can't just exist on kale. And people have this idea that like, well, I don't want to kill animals. Well, do you know how many animals your kale kills? Like just producing like vegetables kills, like you are always going to be killing something in production of food. And animal protein is just the most nutritious food on the planet. So that is just one thing I really just try to repeat over and over again, is like, just eat more animal protein because you're going to feel better. Hormones are going to be more balanced. Like the amount of clients that I used to see who weren't really eating that much animal protein and their periods were just all over the place, or they weren't getting their period, or they were having like really painful or heavy periods. All of a sudden we like had some steak into their diet, and or meat in general, eggs, fish, meat in general. All of a sudden they're like, oh, my periods are come and they go and I feel great and everything is balanced now. And it's just like one steak a week can actually like change your life. So that's a big issue. One of the other issues too, is I see in the space, especially in the animal-based space, is like, just eat nutrient dense food and your body weight will get to where it needs to be. Like just eat freely and just eat healthy food and it's fine. And while that does work for some people, there are some people with a lot of metabolic issues, especially women who have like dieted on and off their entire lives. If they just eat freely, they might not get to the weight that they want to be, or they might just be able to maintain their weight and they might feel okay and feel good. But we also have to remember that a lot of people have, especially if you have gut issues, a lot of people don't actually have the intuition to be able to just intuitively eat and stop when they're hungry and eat when they're hungry. And there's obviously a lot of, as we talked about, like a lot of emotional connection to food. So some people can just eat nutrient dense food, but they're not actually going to get to their goal. So I think there's this, calories in, calories out, and then just eat as much food as you want, as long as it's nutrient dense. There's truth in both of those, but it's also not the whole truth. So I think somewhere in the middle is where the truth is. You still have to focus on energy in and energy out, even if you are eating a very nutrient dense diet.
Beautiful insight. Raw Amanda, if people want to find out about you, the work that you do, and the way that you show up beautifully on social media, where would they find you?
You can find me mostly on Instagram at Raw Fitness and Nutrition. My website is also rawfitnessandnutrition.com. That's really mainly where I am. I mean, now we have Threads, so I'm over there as well. Same username. And yeah, that's really it.
Beautiful. Thank you for jumping on and giving so many insights into all things nutrition, fitness, emotional eating, and acting as well.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.